This will be the 3-link rear suspension video, part 2. If you haven't checked out part 1, you can go back and check that out. It goes over a lot of the basics about the dynamics of the 3-link rear suspension and why I went with it in my G-body over last winter. This video will go over what worked, what didn't, the tuning effects of it, and my overall impression of the 3-link this year. For starters, the first test I got out of it was playing around at Black River Motorsports Park right before going to Watkins Glen back in April. I really didn't know where anything was going to be at. My initial setup put it as close as I could be to the 4-link I had taken out in took that test day. We were playing around a little bit. Mostly I was just trying to work out bugs so I was ready to go to Watkins Glen. And had to work through a few bugs with the engine and just kind of getting some stuff set up. But overall, my impression of the 3-link right off the bat was it felt better. And I wasn't really sure if that was just a placebo effect or not, because I really had all winter that I hadn't driven the car because I've been working on it. Also, the 3-link wasn't the only thing that changed over the winter. I also changed the engine. It was making significantly more power. And a lot of that impression was probably because it was hooking up a little less, but we're also talking April weather in northern Wisconsin, and it just, there's too many variables to really say for sure what was what. So after getting out to Watkins Glen, my first impression on the big tracks was that the 3-link was really nice and stable. Especially on corner exit, like I could go back to power a whole lot sooner than I could on the 4-link than anything that I can recall. So we'll just jump right into what failed and what worked on this setup. The big thing of what failed, my upper axle side mount. I, built it with some lightning holes in it to try to save some weight, and I thought I had enough material there, and it flat out didn't. I mean, I broke it at Gingerman, I broke it at Autobahn, and after that I had to cut the thing to pieces, or basically just scrap the whole thing and start over. I ended up going thicker on my side plates with no lightning holes. I made a longer brace or backside brace, and I even put a gusset on the front to hold it on. And after that, it got through the rest of the year. But I just underestimated how much force would be going through that 3-link, and it's a lot. So I was not getting good feel results in the early part of the year because that bracket was failing, and it was twisting and moving around, and just, I don't know, I didn't have good results with it. And at the same time, I wasn't playing around with the setup enough to really learn what changes were going to do what. So that's kind of on me, because I didn't get into that until later in the year, where I actually started making big changes to see just what would happen. And the reason I didn't get into those big changes is because it was working. I mean, I was comfortable with how it was handling, and I liked where it was at. But I should have been changing more stuff to see how it did differently. Now, stuff that did work. Reusing the lowers from the 4-link setup. This not only saved me money, but it was also a known quantity that I could use because it's the same mounting locations that I've been using. And really, I haven't found a need where I'd want to change them at all. So that worked out great. It's just the factory location on the frame and my multiple adjustment hole heights on the axle, and I just move those around to find what I want for rear steer. The rear steer is also a great thing still. It's very tunable, it's very noticeable. I can make like a 1 bowl hole change, which is around 3/4 of an inch is what they're spaced at, and it's noticeable, it works. Very happy with that because it's something that I can change easily and quickly, and it has a noticeable change in handling immediately. I really like that. Another great thing that worked out good was the Watts link. The only real downside of all these extra links in there was that I couldn't run my tailpipes, which I have just recently figured out. I can just run them underneath the axle and they're not going to hit anything. I'm not losing ground clearance because it's at, right next to the wheel. That's not going to change a whole lot. And then with the suspension movement up and down, I'm not having a problem with that. So I really should have put the tailpipes back on right away. You just can't run over the axle tailpipes. But the Watts link was great. It functioned properly, nothing was binding up. When I did get into making a height adjustment change on the Watts link, it was also something that was noticeable in handling, that I could tell right away, so I really liked that. And the pinion angle variation that we talked about with the length of the arms in the first video, that did work out. I don't remember the exact degree of change. However, it was around half as much as what the forelength was pitching the pinion angle through. The Watts link only moves about half of that now with that longer upper length the way I designed it. So that was a big win too. In August though, I had more chances to be up at Black River Motorsports Park, especially a couple of back-to-back weekends, and that worked out really nice for me because I was up there and was just like, you know what, I'm here, I know this layout, like I should just make changes for the sake of making changes. So what I started with there was with the upper arm and its angles. By steepening the angle, I was putting more lift into it. So if that third link arm is my arm, the steeper the angle, the more it's trying to vertically lift the car on power. And I was able to immediately, I went aggressive. I went right to the maximum height on the axle, and it almost immediately fixed my traction issues. Suddenly it was hooked up again, and even at part throttle, or I could transition to full throttle a lot faster. It was handling better. It was kind of an eye-opener, but like, holy cow, like that small little change fixed so much traction issue, and it was because I built in that adjustability into the car. What I didn't get into was playing a whole lot with the height of that, because that would have more effect on the instant center, but then also it affects the leverage on the arm. And again, I don't know the math about everything about how this, I just know that when I put more angle in it, it gripped up better because I was lacking rear grip. A week later after that, I had started playing with the roll center, so that was moving the Watts link pivot up and down. What I found here was the more I moved that up, the more front end I had. So what it was doing was it was letting the rear of the car roll less, which was putting more weight transfer to the front of the car in a corner, and it basically made it feel like the car had more front end bite. And the reason I had gone to that tuning move was there were several tight corners during this autocross setup where as I would turn, I just hit a point where I had too much slip angle in the tires in the front and it just stopped turning. So by raising that rear roll center, it transferred bite to the front of the car and helped it keep more traction mid-corner. I didn't notice a big difference on corner exit as far as it taking away traction from the rear, and I didn't notice a huge change that it was causing a loss of traction on corner entry either. So it was kind of a win-win. However, what it did do was it made the car not as lively overall, so it slid less in the back, which made me have to adapt my driving style a little bit for it. But overall, like, the car got more predictable. So in the morning, I'd run, and then I would be quicker, and then I'd be quicker. By the afternoon, I had it set up where I could run almost 3 identical times. Like over 3 runs, I was 2/10, so it made the car very, very consistent, which made it easier to drive. Even though if it was a little bit less fast and I may have preferred having it be a little more slidey in the rear, I was still able to drive the car quickly and repeatedly. So for the overall changes between the 4-link and the 3-link, my personal opinion is it's significantly better. Not only in just the handling and the cornering of it, but the fact that with 100 more horsepower this year, I was able to hook up the power better than I've ever been before with the 4-link and 100 less horsepower. So for me overall, that's a big win. It is a huge reason of why I made this change to the 3-link. And the cool part is like I talked about with making that little bit of an angle change where all of a sudden the engine was making even more power at lower RPM and I was having trouble hooking it up, I was able to make a change and immediately grip that up. And that's something that I would not have been able to do with the factory 4-link setup. So for future changes that I will do to make this rear 3-link even better, surprisingly it has nothing to do with the rear of the car. I think one of the big things that I have found right now is that because of my limitations on how high I can put my roll center in the back, which right now it's probably 1.5 to 2 inches above axle center line, and that's kind of maxed out on where I can go with the bracket that I built to start with. So I could build a bracket to move that up higher, or the whole reason of going to this was to be able to move that roll center down and put more leverage into the rear. The best way I've heard this explained, which was just recently, is shearing the tire versus planting the tire. So what was being talked about there is that if your roll center and your center of gravity in the back are, let's say they're exactly the same, when you go into a corner, it's not going to want to roll that end of the car at all. So it's actually going to want to just shove the tire sideways across the ground. So it's shearing. Versus the farther away from center of gravity your roll center gets, which like I said is that pivot on the Watts link, that puts a lever effect in. So that's actually planting the tire because it's making a lever effect to push down on the outside tire. So, and I think that's a great way of explaining it. So where you want to end up depends on your car and the setup and where everything works and just where you end up reaching the limit of adhesion for that tire. So as I said, mine is trending to wanting to move that up. Well, it's because the rear of the car is rolling too much. And because that rear end is rolling too much, I'm unloading my inside front tire, which is causing lockup under braking if I have steering input in, especially on tighter corners. That's been a consistent problem this year. It's also wanting to roll so much that maybe I'm lifting my inside rear, so I'm losing some drive off of corner also, possibly. I don't think that's doing too much because without having a rear roll bar, it helps keep that down, so I still do have good traction. But maybe I'm unloading that inside tire a whole lot more than I could be otherwise. So my options there are I can put a stiffer spring in the rear, or probably what I want to try first is putting a softer sway bar in the front of the car. Because as it transfers that weight by rolling the rear, it's pushing it to the front. So if my sway bar is softer in the front, it might keep that inside tire down better. Or a twofold there is by softening the sway bar in the front, I could stiffen the shock up, which will help the front keep from rolling as much, and it will still put that weight forward, and I'll have better turn-in and better mid-corner. Closing thoughts, this 3-link was absolutely worth it. I was never ever going to get the performance level that this 3-link is offering, and even still has to offer, out of the factory 4-link and the mounting options that I had with it. I would absolutely recommend the 3-link setup to anybody who's looking to do this style of competition and wants to be a DIYer and do it themselves, or or maybe by now there's some kits that'll be out there on the market. I don't know. I built my own because there really wasn't a kit, and I wanted to build one that had a Watts link and had lots of adjustability, so that's what I did for myself. And if somebody was interested in doing something similar like this, I'm sure we could work out something where I could send a bunch of the brackets, because I do have CAD files of all of that stuff, but I mean, really I don't have a complete kit set up because I did just build a whole lot of this myself. But overall, with the fact that it can hook up a whole lot more power, and it's more stable and predictable with the rear end of the car, this has been kind of a win-win all the way around. The extra power was going to be a problem with the factory 4-link, and it's not a problem with this 3-link. I mean, I've raced this car multiple times in wet conditions this year, and it's been great. It's absolutely confidence inspiring, and I love that. So absolutely recommend it.